I can think of no better term to describe what's been going on in Washington, D.C. lately than insanity. So let's take a look at a couple possible answers to the question of the state of impeachment today, next on the Constitution Study.
Every day, we're everyday Americans. Hold our own and call it home. Put it all on a little piece of land. Pay the bills, stay out of jail. Love the neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day, we're everyday Americans.
Well, hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and teach the rising generation to be free. I'm hoping you're having a happy holiday season. I hope you had a Merry Christmas, Merry Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward to a new year. I don't expect it to be any saner than the one we've had. In fact, I expect it to be kind of crazy, but that's for another episode. I want to point you to the website, constitutionstudy.com. You'll find everything that we're working on, find all the articles, find all the places you can ask questions. If you'd like to support the work that we're doing, you have the chance to donate or to buy some of our goods. All of it goes to help spread the message, which I'm going to ask you to help do, and that is spread the message that, yes, not only can you read and study the Constitution for yourself, but you really should. As John Jay said, by knowing our rights, we'll sooner perceive when they're violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. With that, let's talk about what's going on in Washington. Now, I'm sure you are all well aware that the House of Representatives voted 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump. Now, rather than moving them on to the Senate, though, Nancy Pelosi is attempting to retain control of this circus by refusing to send the articles to the Senate for trial, at least until she gets her way. Now, the Constitution states that the House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment, and that the Senate has the sole power to try all impeachments. But it also states that the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Well, Donald J. Trump has been impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, but he's not getting his trial. Now, after spending some time thinking about this, I see 2 possible ways of understanding what's been going on. Now, first, there is nothing in the Constitution that requires a formal transmittal of acts of one house to acts of another house of Congress, except when attempting to override a presidential veto. Now, since the articles of impeachment are public record, the Senate could begin the trial process using the information from the Journal of the House of Representatives. I'm sure this would cause quite an uproar from the political and pundit classes in Washington, but at this point, I do not see any other way the Senate can retain control of their power to try all impeachments. But there's another possibility. See, while researching this episode, I noticed something very interesting. Now, I am no expert on the rules and procedures of the House, but I could find no formalized process for transmitting acts of the House of Representatives to the Senate. The closest I could find had to do with the clerk of the House sending legislation that originated in the House and approved by both houses to the President after it was assigned by both the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, but that was it. I even went to congress.gov and found nothing in the actions recorded to indicate that previous legislation went through a formal process of transmission from the House to the Senate. It's passed by the House and then suddenly it's received by the Senate. So either there is a recorded process hidden behind some legalese that I couldn't find, or it's handled by tradition rather than written down. Now, since everyone in Washington, D.C. seems to think that the Speaker of the House has to follow some formal process to complete the House's work, well, that brings up an interesting situation. See, if the act isn't done until the paperwork's filed, does that mean the impeachment isn't done until the Speaker of the House finishes the paperwork and passes it on to the Senate? If that's the case, then technically, Donald J. Trump hasn't been impeached yet. The House has voted on articles of impeachment, but they haven't filed the paperwork. It's like a prosecutor getting a vote from the grand jury but not actually filing the indictment, or a judge's order that doesn't take effect until the paperwork is filed. I expect this too would cause hyperbolic rants among the ensconced punditry of our nation, but you can't have it both ways. Either Donald J. Trump has been impeached by the vote of the House, in which case he deserves his trial in the Senate, or he's not impeached until Nancy Pelosi finishes the paperwork. Now, regardless of which situation is legally true, there is one simple conclusion to be made about the current state of impeachment of Donald J. Trump. Nancy Pelosi is clearly and unquestionably in contempt of Congress. And no, the irony isn't lost on me that contempt of Congress, I believe, is one of the charges made against Mr. Trump in the impeachment articles. See, clearly the body of representatives she currently serves as leader or as speaker has made their position clear. They believe Donald J. Trump has acted in such a manner that he should be removed from office. Yet contrary to their will, Ms. Pelosi refuses to forward the articles of impeachment to the Senate. She is holding the decision of your representatives in contempt by not fulfilling her duties as Speaker of the House. Her actions show contempt not only for the House of Representatives, but for all Americans that are represented by it. See, by inserting herself illegally in what the Constitution states is solely the Senate's business, she has shown contempt for that branch of Congress as well. Once the House has impeached the president, their job is done. They have no legal say in how the Senate proceeds. Imagine if the prosecutor got to choose what witnesses the defense could call, or had the power to veto jurors they thought would not support their decision. Since the role of the Senate is to represent the states, she is showing contempt for the states as well. Nancy Pelosi's actions have violated President Trump's due process rights by illegally interfering with his trial in the Senate, and she has violated the rights of all Americans to representation in the House by effectively overriding their vote. She has violated the rights of all the 50 states to have their voices heard in the impeachment in the Senate trial. So she has not only violated her oath to support the Constitution, but has shown utter contempt for it and for the union that it represents. If any other Speaker of the House refused to process any other matter legally adopted by the House, well, there would be immediate calls for discipline, possibly including impeachment, because that's just willful disregard of their duties and a subversion of the Constitution and of the rule of law. Yet here we sit, twiddling our thumbs while wondering what Queen Pelosi will do next. Is there any wonder Congress has such a low approval rating? Is there any further evidence needed that our government is corrupt and that it no longer protects our rights? As the Declaration of Independence says, that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Isn't it about time we, the people, once again stand up to these tyrants in our government and alter it in such a way to affect our safety and happiness, not theirs? So what do you think? Republican, Democrat, in favor of impeachment, opposed to impeachment, do you really think that the proper process is to have one person override the will representing 350 million Americans? Do you think one person should override the stated objective of the 435 representatives that are representing the 300 plus million Americans? And the fact that she's being allowed to get away with it, well, to me, that's insanity. That's not a government of laws. It's not a rule of laws. It's a rule of a tyrant. And she should be treated the way we tend to treat tyrants. Not with violence, but with derision and removal. If she cannot fulfill her duties as Speaker, she should be removed. If she insists on interfering with a citizen of the United States' constitutionally protected right to a fair and public trial, she should be removed. This should not even be a question. This is not something that should be debated whether or not she should be removed. If she can't do the job, she should be removed. And the fact that we are spending so much time and effort discussing the pros and cons and what we're going to do show we have no clue what our Constitution says or what the government it created is supposed to do. And as much as we may rail against a party or a person, the buck stops with the American people. It is our responsibility, because those 435 representatives, they represent us. And if we won't hold them accountable, shame on us. And if this is another teetering point, another constitutional crisis, ultimately it's our fault, because we refuse to hold our elected representatives accountable. You know, in some of the comments I've heard in some of the other posts, they talk about, well, the government's done this and the government has done that. Ultimately, remember, the Constitution starts out, we the people. We elect those who represent us in our states. We elect those who represent us in our states in the federal government. And if we're going to let them run amok, don't be surprised when that muck runs all over you. So with that, head over to the website, Constitution Study. Let me know what you think. Maybe ask your own question. Most of all, when you're looking at the news about whether it's the impeachment or anything that's going on related to the Constitution, let's go back to the original document and see what it says. And I hope that I interest you enough that you'll come back and see me the next time on the Constitution Study.
You have to know wherever you make your stand came from